Brooklyn Councilmember Ossé joins me now, and we're going to talk about presidential politics. You were one of the early people to say that Joe Biden should step aside. How do you feel about it now that there's been this inertia in the Democratic Party? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. So ever since I saw his performance in the debate, I got a bit worried. Listen, I'm a staunch Democrat. I want to see Democrats beat Trump in November. In order for us to do that, we need a nominee and a candidate running on Democratic values that's able to pull out a staunch difference between what the Democrats are offering versus what Trump is offering. Biden has not proven to be that candidate over the past couple of weeks. I think he's done great work around climate, around infrastructure. But we need a nominee who's able to speak about those wins. And I do not believe that in his current state, especially with everything that's been going on for the past couple of weeks, that he's the individual that will be able to beat Donald Trump.
Well, there's a big issue here in New York because Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, had hoped to flip some of the Republican congressional seats and help flip control of the House. Do you think that Joe Biden at the top of the ticket will make it more difficult for him to score any victories in New York?
I think it would make it more difficult if Biden was at the top of the ticket. If you look at some of the polling across the country in House races, and especially in some of the Senate races, we're seeing that Democrats are pulling ahead in these battleground states against Republican candidates. Democratic values are something that this country wants to see, whether it's women's rights, climate justice, fair taxes on the wealthy. And in order for us to pull through past the finish line and secure victories from the presidential level down to the Senate and the House, we need a new nominee at the top of the ticket.
So if the new nominee is Kamala Harris, do you think that she'll make a big difference in terms of making inroads with people who might have been giving the Republicans a second look?
Yeah, I think we've also seen polling gone out over the past couple of weeks about how Democrats and voters would be more inclined to vote in a younger candidate to be the Democratic or the next president of the United States. Kamala is polling better than President Joe Biden is currently. I think that she's able to speak amazingly about the values of the Democratic Party and the platform that we have. If she was given the reins, I totally believe that she could pull it off and beat Donald Trump in November.
So this is a loaded question, but do you have a candidate you'd like to see run with her that you think would be a good running mate for her?
I think that's a really good question. Maybe Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania is going to be a hard state to win, like it always is. And I think just balancing that with the ticket, with her at the helm, could be a good look for the Democratic Party.
So there's a little bit of a problem that the council has right now. A council member from your home borough, Brooklyn, Susan Zwang, was arrested at a housing demonstration, allegedly for biting a police officer. What do you think the council should do about it?
Well, I think the council should wait on whatever the investigation yields. I know that the Brooklyn District Attorney, Eric Gonzalez, is going to definitely evaluate the case. I think any type of violence in a situation like this should be taken seriously. We should let the justice system play out, and based off of whatever the results are there, I think the council should take this seriously, especially if there is a charge that is made against her.
So you introduced a really big bill in the council so that tenants wouldn't have to pay broker fees. It's been a little controversial because the landlords don't really like it. Why is the bill so important, and why are the landlords so against it?
So the bill's called the FAIR Act, and what the bill is trying to do is, first, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. In every other state in this country and every other major city in this country except for New York City, whoever hires a broker when looking for housing, whether landlord or tenant, pays the broker fee. This bill would do just that, right? In every other industry, if you hire something, you order something, the person who does that would pay for it.
So if the tenant decides to hire a broker, they
would pay the broker fee.
And if the landlord hires a broker, they pay the broker.
Exactly. And 9 times out of 10, when you're a tenant looking for an apartment in New York City, you find an apartment on your own, sometimes word of mouth, even in the own building that you live in, and you're trying to move into a different unit.
And you shouldn't have to pay a broker fee.
And you're forced to pay a broker fee, even though you never hired the broker. So this bill would change that. It's common sense. We have a majority of co-sponsors in the city council on it, a dozen labor unions, dozens of advocacy groups, and I really believe that we'll get it past the finish line.
So let me ask you this question. I know you're interested in housing. President Biden unveiled a new housing plan this week that would cap the maximum rent increases to 5%, or the landlord, these are buildings that where you own 50 units or more, the landlord would then lose tax breaks if they didn't do it. Good idea, bad idea? What effect would it have in New York?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. And I think the specific term that he's using here is that it would be addressed to corporate landlords, right? This is basically federal rent stabilization. I think it's an excellent plan. I hope that he can get it passed or through prior to the election in November. I think this could be a huge win for Democrats in New York and for the entire population of the United States of America, but I think this is an excellent proposal from the president.
But landlords in New York are not happy about this. They argue that their costs keep going up. It's not only electricity, but the cost of operating their buildings, wages for their employees. Is it a legitimate argument, or do you think they're just sort of wanting to get more profit?
I think landlords are, especially corporate landlords, are always trying to maximize profit. Of course, they would be against something like this. I think that we've seen costs stabilize since the pandemic, and I hear that corporate landlords are still talking about the supply chain, which I think is a little silly at this point. But we need to keep people in their homes. It's good for the economy. It's good for the safety of our streets, and I think this is another excellent proposal from the Biden administration.
So the assassination attempt on former President Trump seems to be indicative of a low regard that some people have about politicians in general. I'm sure it's not limited to him. I wonder if you yourself have ever received any threatening phone calls, any threats, other members of the city council. And then the second part of the question is, what should we be able to do to lower the temperature and convince people that politicians are trying to do something for you?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely have received some threats in my time in office.
Did that surprise you?
It did not. I mean, I understood some of the dangers when first running. I think it was scary, the first threat that I received, and I take all of them seriously. There are a lot of news publications that incite that type of violence onto elected officials. For example, the New York Post really, every time there's an article there, it definitely prompts some threats for me and some of my colleagues. Should there be more
protections for city council members? Police protection or law enforcement?
I think before getting there and using city resources and taxpayer dollars on that type of protection, I just hope that we can improve the culture that is existent in our country right now. Political violence is never the answer, no matter where you lie in the political spectrum. And I think all of us as Americans, as members of the media, should be very cognizant of that, because we need to uphold our democracy's values, and violence is not one of the values within our democracy.
So we have about 15 seconds left. Would you want police protection if you got threats?
I think it depends on the level of violence there. I would potentially look into private security. I do want to reduce the amount of violence or money that is spent on private security for elected officials.
We'll have to leave it right there for now, but our conversations continues right after the show on CBS News New York. We're back with a bonus conversation with Councilmember Chi Ossé. I wanted to ask you, how do you think we should change the tone of political discourse in New York and in the country?
Well, I think all elected officials should call out any political violence when we see it, whether it's an attack on the former President Donald Trump or Speaker Pelosi and her husband. In addition to that, I think always acknowledging how precious and fragile our democracy is, and always honing in on the fact that our values and what we run on is more important than any type of violence that can break out.
So I also want to ask you about something that's a problem that I've thought about a lot, which is low voter turnout in New York City elections. I mean, across the board. For example, in the city council, there's about 173,000 people in each district. But in your race, for example, I think you got about 1,200 votes. In some other districts, it's the same. In a district in the Bronx, a person won with 300 and some odd votes. how do we get people to participate in the system? How do we energize people to care about the people who are elected?
I will say I did get more than 1,200 votes.
I'm sorry.
It's still only 10% of you know the population of the district that I represent, so not nearly the amount that we would like to see. I want to meet people where they're at, especially young people. I would like to engage them in politics.
To vote?
Utilizing social media in a way that is not too government-y, too drony, and more digestible for the public has been my goal within my time in office. I see myself engaging people who either come up to me at some of the schools that I'm touring or on the street saying that they've heard about my bill, the FAIR Act, or that they know about who I am in the city council. And that's meeting people where they're at in a way that is more colloquial. In my first race for office, we turned out a record number of young people in a local city council race.
But do you think you need to do it through social media? What's the trick?
Yeah, I think it depends on the candidate or the person in office. It depends on the strategy used within their communication strategy. I think social media has been a great tool within my personal office in terms of engaging people who have never been engaged before.
So you were a party promoter before you decided to run for city council.
Sure.
How do you use those skills now in the city council and with your voters?
Yeah, I have two answers to that question. Once you've been able to work with drunk people, it's really easy to work with people in government and politics.
Because they're all drunks?
Your words, not mine. And two,
that was a joke.
I know. And two, putting together parties, and especially on a weeknight in the middle of the winter in New York City, takes the same amount of organizing skills as turning out people to the polls. And being able to make something sound exciting and show that it is exciting to bring people out to something that they first wouldn't want to go to is a tool that I've used both in promoting as well as in my time in office.
So how has joining the city council changed your view about government and city government in general? Yeah,
I think it's shined even a greater light on the complacency that exists within our government, and also how possible it is for our city to be a better city. I think I still have a lot of hope. I'm definitely a bit more experienced now than when I started, but I've been able to learn how to navigate that red tape. It's been discouraging sometimes, but the fight still lives on within me to make this city a better city. So what are the three things that inspire you? Yeah, the first thing that I always say is young people, right? I remember in my first race for office, people said I was too young to do it, and a lot of young people are discouraged from doing anything these days, whether it's in the field of business, education, fashion, art, or politics. And seeing young people break through these barriers that are put in front of them, these invisible barriers that are put in front of them, is something that inspires me. Another thing that inspires me is New York. New York is a city where people can make a name for themselves through various different creative avenues. And then the third is my team. I think my team has really gotten me to where I am today. Their belief in me continues to make me believe in myself and in my vision for not only my district, but the city of New York. Well, speaking of beliefs, you're a practicing Buddhist. How does that inform how you approach your job and how you approach your life? Yeah, I'm definitely tested every single day within this world of politics, but I believe that when you navigate this world with positivity, especially positive energy, there'll be a cause and effect that will yield positive change, and that's something that I try to carry every single day, regardless of if I'm tested or not, both within my practice as well as a city council member. So how did you celebrate your last birthday? What did I do for my last? I threw a house party. You did? I did throw a house party, yeah. And how many people came? A decent amount of people, and I hope they show up to the polls in November as well. So I think it would really make a difference. Was there any special thing that you did for your birthday? Was there a special cake? Do you have a special thing? Any traditions? I just love a classic house party. Something that is intimate but borderline out of hand. So I did just that. So, would you consider yourself a dog person or a cat person, or no pet person? I grew up with both a dog and a cat. Cats are more my speed. I think they're a little lower maintenance than dogs, but I do love my dog Red. You have a dog now? My family has a dog, and I'll visit him once in a while. What kind of a dog is he? He's a soft-coated Wheaten Terrier mix. Wow. Yeah, he's a very exciting puppy.
You love him.
I do love him.
So I guess I have to ask you, what's the best piece of advice you've been given?
To take your work seriously, but not to take life too seriously. I think when you navigate industries like politics with joy, with levity, but also with the seriousness of wanting to make change, it makes your job a bit easier and, again, yields better results.
So tell me a little bit about your district. What are the three places in your district you think are a must-see for people who would come to your district?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would definitely say Peaches Hot House, really amazing fried chicken. I would say Fulton Street as a whole. It's this West Indian African corridor that has an array of different shops and scents, and it's a great vibe. And then third is Herbert Von King Park. I think it's a hidden jewel of green space within Brooklyn that not many people know about, but is very beautiful.
So you are a closet fried chicken person?
Closet fried chicken person.
No? You just love fried chicken?
I mean,
you recommended a fried chicken place.
I think it's really good fried chicken if you're in Bed-Stuy. I mean, who doesn't love fried chicken?
Everybody loves fried chicken. That's absolutely true. And on that note, going to Peaches, I'm going to thank you for joining me, and thank you at home for joining me as well.